Real-world computer programming for kids of all ages. Step 55. Dipping a toe into web technology. Part 2. CSS. Welcome back, friends. We've got some stuff showing up on our page, our pane actually, for now. But let's spifify it with some CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. As the name indicates, CSS is used to add style to what might otherwise be termed a bland and boring plain vanilla output, such as what we have so far, in fact. Or should I say in opinion, because beauty is in the eye of the honey farmer, beeholder. And it shows a screenshot of what we have so far. The cascading part is similar to a database expression, cascading updates. When you have such cascading updates, updating a field's value in one table will cause the same value to also be updated in other tables to keep the data in sync. In the case of CSS, the cascading accomplished is that changing the styling for a certain type of element, causes all of those to be restyled. Thus, one seemingly simple change can dramatically alter and hopefully improve the appearance of the output. Let's get to work, as they say on Jeopardy, with some changes to our current output. Looking at it, what comes to mind immediately is that the following should change. The background color to something other than white, which makes it look like a staid old piece of typewriter paper. The font, the current one screams generic. The colors of the various pies make them match the type of pie. Add a border around the table and give the contents of the cells a little space instead of being scrunched up against one another. Okay, so there are 4 things we want to handle with CSS, or somehow anyway. Change the background color. Everything looks good on black, so how about adding this inside the CSS pane? And there's some CSS code that changes the background color to black. Sure, fine, but it causes everything on the pane to be black, even our text. So now we can't see it. So let's change the font color for now to white. Add the following to the CSS and click the Run button to update the output, and you will see this, and it shows now with the font changed to white. You see white text on black background. So we reverse the colors. The font or text is white instead of black, and the background is black instead of white. It looks better than it did, in my opinion anyway, but still, the CSS markup above looks even spiffier than our output. There's still more work to do, obviously. Change the font. By adding font family Candera Georgia Baskerville Serif to the CSS, it now looks like so. And it shows a screenshot of what that change accomplished. Better, right? I think so. What this font family directive does is tell the web page's rendering engine, if you've got it, use the Candera font. If not, use the Georgia font. If you don't have that either, then use the Baskerville font. If you don't have any of those 3, just use the default serif font. Note, serif is not the name of a font, but the name of a general style or type of font. Serif fonts are fancier than sans serif fonts. Sans is French for without, and serif refers to those squiggly grace notes attached to letters. So sans serif means basically without frills. Serif fonts, while potentially beautiful, are a little less easy to read than sans serif fonts are. Like many things in life, it's a trade-off, whether to use serif, fancy, or sans serif, easier to read, fonts. You can experiment with all kinds of different fonts. Sometimes you have to install fonts that you really like, as your computer will by default only have a small subset of all those that are available. You should be able to find something you like without going to that extra time and trouble, though, unless fonts are really your thing. Now, you must keep in mind, though, too, that just because you have the font or don't have the font on your computer doesn't mean that the end user has or does not have that font. The only way to guarantee they will see precisely what you want them to see, font-wise, is to use one of just a handful of standard fonts, which every computer has, or to embed the font in the code. That is a subject that is way beyond where we are at this point, though. Change the colors of the various pies. Now I want to change the color of the names of the pies to correspond with the pies as they look in real life. In other words, the blackberry pie should be purple, not black. The cherry pie should be red, etc. By changing the pie list items from this, and it shows it as it currently exists, just a list item, apple pie, the closing list item, to this and quite a bit more code, it works, and it shows a screenshot of that, how the pies are now colored the way we want them to be, a wallaby. So you surround just the part of the text that you want to color in a span tag and add the style attribute as shown, specifying the color you want that part of the text to be. Add a border to the table. Finally, we want to whip this table into shape, give it a border, and provide some separation between the elements so they are not running together. Sometimes it turns out that you can accomplish something at a lower or earlier level. For example, we can fix the table's blah and confusing appearance right in the HTML rather than doing it with CSS, like so. And then it shows the HTML that was added to do this. This style tag shown above is inserted between the HTML and body opening tags. Here's what it does for us, and then it shows a screenshot of how the table now looks with that HTML applied. A little explanation of what it's doing might help, although you can probably get a pretty good idea by looking at the new HTML. You need to know that the directives within table, within the curly braces, apply to the table as a whole. Those within TD, table data or cell, apply there. And those within TH apply at the table header level. In this case, TD and TH are grouped together, sharing the same properties and assignments, but that doesn't have to be the case. Finally, there is the TR section, which applies to table rows. So let's take a look at those parts to see what is being accomplished. Let's take them one at a time. And then it shows the HTML for the table and says, here a font or font family is assigned to the table. The width is set to 100%, which means take as much space as you can without crowding the other columns or spilling off the edge of the page. And then the TD and TH HTML is shown. The cells and header are given a 1 pixel white border. The text within them is aligned left, and padding, space around the elements, is added to the tune of 8 pixels. Finally, it shows the TR HTML for the table rows. This is perhaps the most interesting one. It is easier to see table data rather. That is, to keep straight in our eyes and brain which pieces of data belong to which row when the background of the rows alternate colors. Here, the nth even children are given a purple background. In other words, every other column of an even number, 2, 4, etc., is assigned the color named. Of course, you can change this to any color. There are several named colors, such as white, black, purple, blue, light blue, dark blue, red, yellow, green, light green, orange, brown, etc., but you can actually use any conceivable or even previously inconceivable color you want. It is more involved to do so, involving the use of numerical values to describe the colors, usually in the hexadecimal numbering system, but it can be done. This too is something beyond what we will discuss. Just know that it is possible to use any color you can dream up. Note, almost anything you can imagine to do in programming is possible. But this is another area where sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. Sometimes the standard colors are good enough, and using a custom color would take a lot more time and effort. It's up to you whether you pursue the perfect shade, the heavenliest hue, the tastiest tint, etc. So there's quite a contrast between what we started with and what we ended with by adding 3 to 5 lines of CSS and a few additional lines of HTML. And then a screenshot is shown of both how it looked at the outset and how it looks now. Here is the CSS in its entirety, just 3 to 5 lines of code depending on how you look at it. And here is all the HTML. Not a real lot there. Thus concludes a brief introduction to what CSS and a little more HTML can do for you. It is just a light scratching of the surface, though, as to CSS's Samsonian powers. Most of the amazing web design that you see is due mainly to what CSS wizards have accomplished. Mastering the niceties and meanities of CSS is a whole discipline in itself, which you can delve further into if you so desire. But we are going to move on next to JavaScript, after which we will be ready to begin on our web app. Until we meet again in the next step.